Hey there everybody, I'm Reload and I am playing Fallout 4 VR on the Oculus Rift below the minimum specifications, that is I'm playing on 980 Ti. In case you don't know, 1080 is the minimum spec for the game. Regardless, it shouldn't even be possible to play this game, but it works. So let's take a look at what's it like to first and foremost play Fallout 4 VR, but also how this game plays on Oculus Rift with touch controllers. Since I am playing this game below the minimum specs, but I'm also recording the gameplay as well, what you see on the screen is not indicative of how good the game can actually look. And as usual, it's very difficult to translate the experience of actually playing a VR game when you're simply displaying the output on a flat screen. Looking back at the recording, there's actually an artifact that appears on the left hand side. It's a quick flicker of black screen whenever I turn fast to the left. I have not actually experienced this when I was in the VR headset. What you're seeing on the screen is the output from the right eye of Oculus Rift. It's possible that the output on the left eye is compensating for this, so it's not visible to me in-game. So what I'm going to do from this point forward is put a bit of a vignette around the display, just to dampen the annoying flicker. So what I'm going to do in this playthrough, just to test out how the Rift works, is go through the very basic first mission. If you've never played Fallout 4, there will be a few spoilers of course. It's not so much the main storyline mission, but it is the first quest for the Minutemen faction, which is When Freedom Calls. But here's Codsworth.
As I live and breathe.
So the dialogue is just as usual. You get to select one of 4 options using your right controller's joystick. The main difference with the regular Fallout version is that you don't actually get to see the cutscene of you talking to this character. In fact, you don't get to see your own character at all throughout the whole game. You can briefly select your gender and appearance in the beginning, but there's almost no customization options for your character. You just get to pick the face and that's it. I haven't gotten to the Diamond City Barber part yet, but I'm not even sure if it's in the game now. I guess we'll find out later.
Where is the missus, by the way?
Ouch, Codsworth. Too soon. But let's skip to the boring part of roaming Sanctuary with Codsworth and move on to the more fun stuff. The health bar and your action points are conveniently displayed on your right joystick. The movement itself is done with the joystick on the left touch controller. Of course, every tooltip and the icon for the controls is designed with Vive in mind, so a lot of times you have to infer what all the control maps mean. When you aim with the right controller at a downed enemy or any container out there, you actually get the itemized list of what you can pick up. Doing so with the left controller brings up the familiar menu where you can transfer items back and forth. So far the controls on the Rift Touch are working fine. I actually really like using the right controller for this since it allows me to select specifically the items that I want. It's also a little bit easier to use the right controller to really perform the action. I'll talk about the exact reason in a moment, but this is the point where the amazing Fallout 4 experience is starting to turn very frustrating if you play on Oculus Rift. I am just trying to pick up this tire iron because I really want to see how melee combat works out in VR in Fallout 4. But it just won't go into my inventory no matter what I do at this point. Part of it is that I really have to fine-tune the way I position the joystick on either controller. As you know, Vive controllers have a touchpad, and Rift Touch has the analog joystick. I don't think the joystick sends any signal until you actually start moving it slightly. So to fit the Vive controller map, I have to move the joystick enough to actually trigger an action, but not too much that I start running if I use my left controller. If I just leave it in a stationary neutral position, clicking it won't do a thing. In this case, me being unable to pick up the tire iron could have been just a game glitch. Once I put away the pistol, I was able to add it to my inventory no problem. And really, fine-tuning your movements is a minor thing that you can get used to compared to what is actually broken about the controllers that affects the game immensely. Pip-boy is almost unusable when you're using Oculus Touch controllers. And it's the whole touchpad versus joystick thing again. And I hope this will be fixed soon. It doesn't seem like a big fix in my mind, but I don't know the underlying code. Instead of simply scrolling and leaving you the selected item, as your joystick springs back to its neutral position, your selection moves as well. That makes it almost impossible to reach all the menu items. Watch as I struggle here to select the tire iron I just picked up. Reaching the inventory tab is no problem, but keeping the selection in the weapons category and going through all the items is very frustrating. It's still doable as you play around with sensitivity of your movements, but a simple action such as this takes way too much time. Using a more classic controller is not yet supported for Fallout 4 VR. But after recording this footage and playing for a little while longer, I actually used Steam controller on a few occasions to go through the menus. It actually works fine, but it shouldn't have to be this way. In case you don't know, ZeniMax and Oculus were involved in a bit of lawsuit. And that's where all the Rift incompatibility comes from. It just sucks that now consumers are caught in the middle. But hey, it's Dogmeat. Hi Dogmeat. It's probably the best companion in-game. But something about VR makes Dogmeat even cooler. You actually feel like there's a real dog following you around helping you survive in this post-apocalyptic wasteland.
Okay then, let's stick together.
So, combat. Actually, this is quite cool. I'll be using bats with my tire iron. Hitting the mole rat with the tire iron is as simple as simply swinging your controller. And then you can use your left controller to teleport closer to the next target. Simply place the trigger and select the place you want to teleport to. I haven't quite figured out the perfect range for melee strikes yet, but the fact that you can move around in the slow motion bats is quite cool. Of course, you can't stay in bats forever. You slowly run out of action points. I'm assuming perks like Blitz will actually help you teleport further while you're in bats. And really, it makes combat in VR that much easier. I think I couldn't quite hit this mole rat because maybe I had to crouch in order for the tire iron strikes to be registered. But at the same time, I could hit them in bats no problem. Well, that dude flew away. At ease, Dogmeat. So now let's see how combat in bats works with guns. I usually really dislike fighting the blood bug hatchlings. They're just creepy creatures that are tough to hit. But the slow-mo bats makes it a lot easier. You have to aim on the specific body part, and sometimes it's tough to keep that aim. For example, here I was trying to target the main body, but it kept cycling back to the wing. But it's much more satisfying to kill the enemies in bats in VR. Because now you're not a passive observer anymore. You actively target and decide how many bullets to spend. So now we're in Concord and Preston Garvey is fighting some raiders up ahead. I still want to try to sneak up on someone and now I'm gonna switchblade. And I just can't help but try to pet Dogmeat. It feels too real. And what is this raider doing? Of course, Dogmeat is in hot pursuit, means I can't sneak up on this raider anymore. And Dogmeat is fighting now. Ooh, you should not have done that. Now have to go John Wick on you. Trying to kick Dogmeat, that's unacceptable. By the way, if you don't know, your companions are invulnerable. They can be downed, but they can't be killed. So if you're playing this for the first time, whatever you do, do not spend your stim packs on your companions. By the way, I am using smooth locomotion. It is not the default way to move in the game. You have to go to the settings and turn off teleportation locomotion. I mean, it's a good thing that there is choice and options for all the players. But I am surprised that the smooth locomotion is still not the default setting. I also turned off the comfort vignette. Basically, if you have it on, the sides of your screen will dim when you move left, right, forward or backward. You can select how prominent the vignette is, but I just got rid of it altogether. And so far I have experienced zero discomfort in the game. Except of course at this point where I tried to equip the laser musket, and I cut out that part from the video, but it literally took me 40 seconds to simply go down the menu to select and use the laser musket. I really hope this is fixed soon. But the laser musket itself looks awesome. I never actually noticed or looked up close at the laser effect, but now in VR I can. It also actually feels a little big. But all the guns in Fallout 4, no matter how big or small, are only held by one hand. It's gonna be super cool trying to use the sledgehammer. So crouching for stealth works super easy with just one push of a button. It's the grip button on the left controller, so you don't actually have to crouch when you're playing. But if you do want to do that, the option is there. It all depends on if you want a more hardcore immersive experience or just a casual gameplay session. Playing on Oculus Rift with just two sensors, it's easier to stick with just the button press for the crouch. Speaking of just using two sensors versus the room scale VR, you can rotate your view with your right joystick. The view moves in increments of 15 degrees or so. It's not smooth rotation, but it's better than nothing. And Dogmeat once again foils my attempt at stealth. But that's alright, he's a good pup. The thing that I noticed about using melee weapons compared to the regular Fallout 4 is that the so-called rate of fire is not really limited. You can swing your arms as fast as you can and still land effective blows in a rapid succession. Now and then when I loot the raiders, I unintentionally trigger the command for Dogmeat. It's not really a big deal, but sometimes it gets in the way during the battle. But coming back to the locomotion controllers, it's nice that I can actually rotate my character in-game without having to move my own body. But it would be very good to see a smooth option for that as well. Once again, I think it's fears of VR discomfort or being disoriented while you're playing the game. Those are legitimate concerns, but I don't see why you can't include the customization options for those that really can handle it. Personally, I'd say it's even more disorienting when you feel the view just shifts. Being able to rotate your view in-game is very important even if you do have room scale VR, and it's completely essential if you're playing as a standing or sitting experience. But like I said, something is better than nothing. Even though I'm playing on the Rift with just 2 sensors, it's still an enjoyable gameplay experience. I can't turn my back to the sensors, because then they lose track of my controllers, but I have at least 180 degrees of freedom of movement. And when needed, I can rotate the view with my controller to wherever I want it to be. Nailed it!
Man, I don't know who you are, but your timing's impeccable. Preston Garvey, Commonwealth Minuteman.
Unfortunately, I didn't find any bobby pins, so I can't show off the lockpicking mechanism in VR, but hacking the terminals is very simple. You get the full screen view of the monitor and the usual hacking minigame. As you might expect, the whole process is affected by the Rift Touch controller issue, but it's not as frustrating as navigating the Pip-Boy. In my next playthroughs, I will be trying to find a lock to pick and some bobby pins. I'm actually quite interested to see how the controls work out for that. But let's talk about the next minor issue in the game. The placement of the HUD for the power armor is not the most optimal in my opinion. The Pip-Boy display is nice, and actually I prefer to use it that way, just floating on the screen when needed instead of popping up when I look down at my wrist. But the main heads-up display is actually all the way at the bottom of my view, and a lot of it is obscured. No matter how much I crane my neck to look down, I actually can't see it all. It's a little bit better on the screen that you're seeing right now, but in the VR headset I'm straining to see the damaged red leg. It's not that big of a deal because all the information is kind of redundant. I can see my health and my action points floating next to the right controller, so it's just a minor cosmetic issue. And there we go, the minigun. Feels awkward because it seems it should be heavier, but I'm just using my one arm to wield it. This is probably the best part of the first missions that you get to play in Fallout 4. You get to feel very overpowered right in the beginning of the game. And of course the experience is further enhanced in VR. I haven't actually tested this out yet, but I do wonder whether your height is bumped up in the game when you step into the power armor. Of course your height within the game depends on what you set your height as when you set up your Vive or Oculus Rift. It's actually a little funny to play this game while seated. When I did that, I was the exact height of Dogmeat. It's almost like a permanent half-crouched position. And now it's almost time to fight what Mama Murphy warned us about. That Deathclaw is no match for the minigun of course, but make sure to keep your distance if you're playing for the first time. Overall, it's a very enjoyable experience to be immersed in the world of Fallout 4. It's unfortunate that ZeniMax did not provide native Oculus Rift support. I get it that there's a lawsuit involved, but consumers should not be caught in the middle. I'm confident that sooner rather than later the controllers will be fixed. As of making of this video, that's one major blemish on an otherwise excellent VR gameplay. I don't think smooth turning will be introduced into this game, but I'm hoping that there's a chance that it will. The fact that there isn't much character customization and you don't actually get to see your character at all is really not a big deal. The only reason why I would prefer to at least glance at my character is to see what kind of apparel I'm wearing. It's a lot easier to tell visually rather than trying to rummage through all the Pip-Boy menus. If your computer doesn't meet the minimum specifications required to run Fallout 4, I think those specs can be stretched a little bit. Basically, I'm running on the video card almost a generation behind what's required. And so far so good, I could even record some footage with it at the same time. But I haven't gotten to all the resource heavy parts of the game yet. In my next playthrough I'll be trying to go to Lexington to see if I spot any dip in the performance. Thank you so much for watching everybody. If you have any questions about playing Fallout 4 VR on Oculus Rift, please leave a comment on this video. If you found this video entertaining or informative, please leave a like. And subscribe to my channel for more VR gameplay. I'm Reload and I'll see you out there in the wasteland.